Hola, mis amigos. Let's go. I guess we're starting off with Spanish today because porque no los dos. Wait, well, if porque is like why? Is porque? Why not? Porque no los dos is like why not? Why not both? Porque? I don't know. Anyway, that's the limit of my Spanish, apparently, obviously. So I just came back from a walk in the cemetery again. I started Reams live here. I ended it there. I did not take Chino today because I didn't feel like picking up dog poop. And apparently, Chino loves to poop in the cemetery. He pooped like 3 times one time. And every time I had to carry this steaming hot, vile bag of dog crap until I could find a trash can. And anyway, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. It's Mother's Day here in the US. I'm not sure if I think it's different days in different countries. Um, so anyway, today I smelled the diapers again in the same space, but this time I smelled fresh diapers twice. Um, I smelled it in the back this time, and I was gonna look at a map, and I might actually still try to look at a map to see if I can place what direction that was in. Um, So give me one moment as I find that. Excuse me, not that I know much about directions. I'm better with direction now though than when I was younger. When I was younger, I was just like it was impossible for me to orient to the to anything. I couldn't orient to direction, I couldn't orient to time. I couldn't tell the difference between 5 minutes and 3 hours. I didn't know well, I didn't know my left from my right, but so give me a second. If I'm leaving, I'll go out. So it should be up here and then down here. It's right. Let me just zoom out. Hold up. This is going to take a second because, like I said, I'm not great with direction. So I come out here. I go up here. I go down here. No. This should not be this hard. Oh, wait. No, that's the other way. I'm so confused. Maybe I should just give up. Because I don't know. It's not there. I wish I could unlock. Oh, wait, I can move my phone. But if I move my phone, what I'm going to do is I'm going to orient lock my phone so that I can move my phone around and I can mimic what I do to leave. So I come up this street. I don't even need to do it. Take a right here. And then here's this. No, see, because that's. Oh, wait. Wait. I think I know how to do this. I was going to do it that way, but we're not going to do it that way. We're going to use. Is my hometown that. I mean, I know my hometown is small, but like. Is it that small? Is it this way? Why is this so confusing? Okay, that's my house. I come out here. What is this? This place, I don't even know. This is nowhere near. What the freak is this? This saying there's a pharmacy by my house, and I feel like that is not correct. There is not a pharmacy right there, unless somebody's operating a pharmacy out of their home. Which I guess they could be. So it's this, and then I go straight. I go straight here. Yeah, yeah, okay. And then there's the light. No, that's, yeah, so here's the light. And then I go through here. That's where I stop. It's a four-way stop. It's literally right here. Okay, thank you. So it's the south corner. Because if I go down here, yeah, okay. Because it's by the high school field. And I guess they renamed the field or something. So that's why I was so confused when I saw this facility. But yeah, so it's the south corner. So on the south side of the cemetery and on the north by northeast side, that's where the fresh diaper smell comes in. Okay. All right. That was a lot. That took a long time for me to to get that. And it's literally probably inconsequential. Hey Holly, my walk was really good. I think it's because the nature of my work has changed. I found that my stamina and endurance is a lot higher than I thought it would be. And I guess it's interesting because for the past, like, this, for the top of the year, I wanted to like do something so that when I go on my trip, I can be at least semi-active comfortably. Because if I'm going to Scotland, I want to see stuff, right? And so um just now, literally in the month of my trip, I was like, well, let me at least start walking. And so I started walking, and I noticed I can walk a lot more than I thought I would. But it's because the nature of my job has changed because of the person who was first on maternity leave and then left. And now because I'm doing her job, I'm a lot more active. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that worked out in that way. So, but is that not life? Things, I feel like some of life has been situations that I do not want slash like that end up playing out in a way that benefits me later on in some way because of what I have to do. So I've learned to embrace challenge a little bit more, complain a little bit less, and whatever. So well, thank you. Um so anyway, the last time I went on a walk, I went with my little brother, and he didn't park in the spot that we always park in because he was like, I don't know where to park. He passed the spot. I'm like, you passed the spot. I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking you passed the spot that we always park in. And we walked around the cemetery backwards. And like when I go the way that I usually go, which is counterclockwise, everything is downhill. But if you go clockwise through the cemetery, everything is uphill. And I just realized that the last time. But I went clockwise this time because I wanted to, like push myself a little bit. So it's not majorly uphill, but everything that is downhill typically is uphill now. So, and then I did Kirsty, hola, hola, how are you doing today? I walked around like the outer perimeter, and then I did like the inside, and then I came back and did a little bit more inside, and then I stopped because I wanted to do this. So I think I took a picture of it when I did the pick cemetery feature reading, but I actually might not have. There's an angel, a stone angel in the cemetery, and the stone angel is looking down and pointing up. But so like it's like this, and when it's pointing up, but its finger is broken. So it's like it's still longer than all the other fingers, but I'm gonna see what the angel was pointing at, basically. So I'm using the angel tarot to represent the angel. I'm gonna pull a card to represent where it's cut, and then another angel plus a clarifier to see like what it would have been pointing at. Because I like to do stuff like that. And then when I was ending my walk, there was a tombstone that was glittering. I saw it was a couple. One of them passed not too long ago. He was like 104, and his wife is about to be 100. She'll be 100 in 2025. I was like, wow, that's an old, like, that's a couple of people who lived. I don't know if they like lived life to the fullest, but they lived a decently long life. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, happy Mother's Day, Kirsty. Because mum's the word. But anyway, on the way to another tombstone that was like blinding me the way it was catching the light when I was into my walk, I passed one that said it was like hope lives in the cross or something like that. In the cross lives hope. And so I'm going to pull before and after the Andean cross as well. So, and then, I'll go from there or whatever. So we're focusing on the cards today. I think you have kids, Holly, right? Happy Mother's Day. Do you have twins, Holly? I think you said you have twins. You have twins. Eve has twins. Ariel almost had twins, but we just didn't know the gender of the baby. 21-year-old twins. Oh, snap. They're drinking age, legal drinking age. I had my first drink when I was a week from 22. And the person that I had my first drink with my best friend, and she likes the harder stuff. So I acquired a taste for the harder things, more whiskeys and stuff like that. Oh, okay. That was all right. Okay. Well, there's only one angel, so I guess we'll take. Are these all? Maybe these will be different angels. No. Maybe they're the same angel. Okay. So we got the devil, Samael, the severity of God. Seduction and downfall, communicates with the dead, teaches the occult and magic. And then Akahaya, I don't know how to pronounce this. The forbearing God. Patience reveals secrets of nature, spreads knowledge and industry. Which is interesting because it was, I didn't know it until one of the first times I walked on a cemetery by myself, because that's a recent thing for me. But there's like a bunch of Freemason symbols out there. And there was one on the pillar. So they're like, there's a name. There are these 3 steps that go up to this name, the angel statue, and then there's a pillar by the angel. I'm holding my hands up. So like, this is the angel. There are like 3 steps. There's like the block. There's a pillar right next to it. Like, so this is the pillar. This is the angel. There are 3 steps leading up here, and there's a name like right here. And the angel's pointing up. And then I'm looking like, what is the angel pointing up at? But on the pillar, there's like a Freemason symbol or something. And the only reason why I bring that up is because we have the teacher of occult and magic, like what is hidden, what isn't necessarily freely distributed. And then we have the revealer of the secrets of nature, spreads knowledge and industry. And so like this would be the energy of like rites of passage, rituals, initiations, what is sort of kept within. This is that information just sort of like being made more freely available, or the information is already there. We just don't necessarily know how to tap into it. And it does remind me of, I did a read recently, and the domain of Duat came out as a realm, and it was all about how the domain of Duat teaches the mysteries of the world around us, nature, everything, but it's all behind rites and rituals. And then there was an energy where like that information is sort of available to us, but it's just a matter of interpretation of it, and that's where like high priestess energy came in and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm gonna pull this angel right here. I guess we'll do 2 for 2, because why not? And then I'll pull another deck that I don't know. If this is angelic, I need something super earthy. And so, oof, everything's going to shift here for a second. I'm going to pull the wild unknown, but um, I'll do the wild unknown because it uses animals, and animals can hold still similar, um, like guidey type of energy, but more in the 3D way. Sorry, I'm like shifting and moving everything. There we go. I don't know. All right. So let's see what's blocking this. Or is this one blocking this one and this one blocking that one? Maybe they block each other. Mother of Cups and the Three of Swords. That could be the space. The space, it could be the space of like a blocked intuition because of perception. Because of the way that we perceive the natural world that we interact with, it would make it difficult for us to sort of see certain things as they are instead of how we perceive them to be. Oh, look, the High Priestess, the Five of Wands, and Strength. Bottom of the deck is the Father of Swords. Maybe it's just easy for things to get lost in translation. Or I also love that we have a sun and moon energy here. The moon and the High Priestess, the sun and strength. Um, and so it feels like it's just the fact that um, Remy, it's the fact that things can kind of sort of get lost between the appearance and it's like under the iceberg, below the tip of the iceberg. And from the tippy top to the boppy bottom, I don't know. From the top to the bottom, there's a lot of space in between. And it's the space in between where this Five of Wands is. It's like we can get a good surface level understanding of it. We can get a good, like, the bottom part of the iceberg understanding of it. But in between, that's where we get lost because of the way that we relate and correlate things. And so someone else offers us a correlation or someone else offers us an understanding. And that's fine. But it feels like the human limit is still there. Um, and so it's like it becomes almost a translation of 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 a translation. And it's like rather than necessarily reinterpreting the exact same source material, so we don't get like five different translations of the same source, we get five different translations, but each is a subsequent translation of one that came before. So there are things that are lost, there are things that become diluted, there are things that don't translate neatly. And that's even like going from one language to another language, right? There are sayings, idioms, metaphors that just don't work in other languages because of cultural experiences, right? Like if you've never been around a giraffe and I'm from a place surrounded by giraffes, we may have sayings or whatever related to giraffes. But if you don't know anything about giraffes, it wouldn't mean anything to you. And now, depending on the translator, it's either like that gets dropped entirely, or I have to find something in your world that I can correlate that to. But depending on how similar or dissimilar they are, something may still be lost, right? Because a giraffe and a horse aren't the same, or a horse and a zebra, or a horse and a donkey, even if they are similar. Um, but with the patience here, and revealing the secret, it's almost like if you spend enough time with it for yourself, you would get to know. What I find interesting about these two angels in particular is like Samael is the angel that is on the devil card, right? And we have an angel with cloven hooves for feet on the other one. So that was just interesting. Now let's see what lies beyond the cut off finger. We have the Wheel of Fortune Metatron and the Fool Vahuvia. So the recording angel and number one, the exalting God. The Metatron is advancement in progress, teaches, guides, and records events in the book of life. The exalting God, will and new beginnings, assists with difficult undertakings. Can y'all hear Chino? The Urban Dictionary. um, it's interesting that we have all of Metatron sort of above that we're cut off from, because that would be like everything. Everything all is recorded in the book of life. The Father of Swords at the bottom. I think the Father of Swords is about a usable understanding of things, especially with the way that he's holding his sword. And like, there's the Three of Swords that block the High Priestess. Um, it's like we can have a working understanding of certain things to the point where it's like we know enough to do something. We may not necessarily. It's like when you're doing a problem and you arrive at the right answer, but your approach may not have been necessarily correct. And for a lot of people who have been through school, it's like, well, as long as I get the right answer, that's all that matters, right? Like, it doesn't matter if the way that I did it was wrong. I got the right answer, so I should get full credit. And it's like, yes and no, because as a teaching, as a learning facility, as a place of learning, they're teaching the process more than the answer. Because what happens when the answer is not the same? It's like, yeah, we can pass you on this test, but if you go out into the real world, if you go out into life and you're doing things the wrong way, you may not always encounter a situation where you still get the right answer. And when you do encounter a situation where you don't get the right answer, who do you blame? Probably the people who taught and educated you, right? This person said that person said whatever, and I'm doing it and it's not working. And it's like, well, your process wasn't right. What you were doing got you the right answer in these certain situations. Yeah, sure. But because of that, now we have a very sort of limited window of where we are like effective. And that's why it's like, maybe that's this sort of conflict or this disconnect between the process and the solution. No, everything is a learning experience. Eve, happy Mother's Day. How you doing today? I took my mommy out to dinner yesterday. And I was going to get her a new phone, but they weren't in stock. And my mom, I'm not going to say she has trouble accepting things. but she's a very like frugal person, and I'm frugal where I don't care, but I'm very not frugal where I do. There are some things I spend money on and a lot of things that I don't. And so I'm like, let me get you this. Like, this phone is amazing. Look at the camera quality. It would help you in your business so much. This is exactly what you said you've been wanting. And she's like, oh, I don't know, son. Like, that's a lot. I could do a lot with that. And I'm like, yeah, you could, but also at the same time, like, hello. So, we'll see. You got a happy Mother's Day, Mom, but I didn't get you anything. I was on Instagram and I wish I would have took a screenshot of it. But there was this candle. It was like, having a son as great as me is the only gift that you need. I was like, that is perfect. I wanted to give my mama one of those, but it wouldn't have arrived before Mother's Day. So, um, this is interesting though. But I feel like the thing about life is the thing about the divine that I'm tempted to believe in is that you wouldn't need anything outside of yourself to navigate life. Because if you did, it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to those who have it, who are born with access, who carry the secrets through multiple generations of their family. I mean, it's nice, but to keep things sort of like fair and even and just, the nature of like being and existing in itself, if we can be present in the moment, if we can listen and observe, life would tell us everything we need to know. And I feel like that's this energy here. This is the natural learner versus the educated one or the initiated one. Now, Metatron versus the Fool is interesting. As they are, I would say that Metatron is like, everything is written in Metatron's book. But with it coming off of the knowledge of like, with it, the link between like teaching the occult and magic and recording things in a book of life, it's like this is limited by what has been recorded. This doesn't have that same limitation. It's like, because this energy learns to pull from the experience itself. So anything that they gain in the experience is open to them, even things that aren't recorded. Some of the things that would be, of course, because somebody had to experience it first. Some of the things that aren't. And I don't think either pathway is necessarily wrong. There are pros and cons, benefits and burdens to both. Um, but I think either way, it's about a sort of openness. And the thing that I love about the King of Swords is that, to me, King of Swords upright knows when it doesn't know something. And a King of Swords upright knows how to listen. A King of Swords upright knows when to listen. And so I think there are some king, queen, emperor, empress energies that are like, well, I am top brass. I've gone through it. I know everything. There's nothing outside of my realm of knowledge. There's nothing outside of the purview of my sight that happens. So it's like it isn't open to learning, seeing, or really evolving and changing, which is why there was a whole page 2.0 thing at the beginning of like 2020. It was like there are kings and queens 1.0, and then there are pages 2.0. And the page 2.0 is going to take things further than the king or queen 1.0 ever could, because they are limited by their knowledge. They're limited by their experiences. And that's the point where their achievements become hindrances, burdens, and blockages. But the King of Swords is always the one, especially upright. The King of Swords upright is the one who will listen to the Fool. The King will listen to the Page. It'll listen to the Knight. Because that, like, listening is basically in his domain. Because especially as people, the way that we learn is by listening. or the way that we learn is by being present. So, anyway, full yeah, take it. Take it, Kirsty. I thought it was a different day in the UK. And I think maybe in Canada, because somebody in a different country had said Mother's Day. And I was like, oh, like Mother's Day ain't here in America yet. But you. Under false pretense. It's not false pretense. It's just love from a different time zone. It's love from a different time zone. Yeah, that type of person, I'm like, okay. And I try not to be that person. I feel like maybe sometimes I can read as that person. I might come off as that person, but I really do listen. I listen. I don't just blindly accept everything, but I do listen to everything, and then I give it time for it to like percolate through my universe, through my experiences, both in a retrospective, introspective way, and as it's unfolding in the moment way. And sometimes in the moment, things will play out, and I was like, "Oh yeah, they're right. Okay." Contrary to what my own mother may believe, my mom thinks I don't listen. I'm like, I listen. She was like, well, if you listen to me, you would do what I tell you to do. I'm like, that's not how listening works. Listening to you means that I'm hearing you. I'm giving space for understanding to unfold. I'm letting it percolate. Listening does not equate to doing what you say. Because I can listen to you and decide that your truth and my truth are just different. And so I'm going to do something besides what you tell me to do. Doesn't mean I didn't listen to you. But with her naturally being my mother, that's why I asked my mom one day, because I saw something, maybe somebody said something on the internet or something. And I was like, Mom, have I ever, I can't even remember. But she was like, you didn't even listen to me. So I don't know why you thought you would listen to anybody else. And I was like, true, true. Yeah. Also, if my mother watches this, and hopefully she won't, she'll be pleased to know that this is a table down view. We were in the car yesterday and she was talking about a ring light or something. She was like, oh, I could give you that other ring light I got. And I was like, she was like, oh, but you don't have room for it. And I was like, I don't really need it. She was like, yeah. And then she said something about how you can see the fridge off to the side with the stuff on top of it. She was like, yeah, and that way, people aren't seeing that fridge. I was like, how do you know about that? You shouldn't be watching my videos. She was like, you don't tell me what to do. I can do whatever I want. So I was like, well, I'm going to delete my channel so then you can't watch me. She was like, you won't do that? I was like, bet. I already got a second channel. Anyway. So that's this. Again, there are benefits both ways. And one way, it's like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you almost get an accelerated approach to a lot of things, but then it just comes to an openness to fine tuning, an openness to correcting, an openness for it adjusting to your universe. Right. And I think I said this when I went live last time, but the Virgo Hermit Lantern, the Hermit in the Before Tarot, was percolating in my brain. And I titled that video The Rebirth of the Innermost Self. But then I titled it something different. But the innermost self, that could just be, again, like who we were meant to be in this lifetime. The innermost self can be our truest self. It's the self that exists without all of this hurt, pain, trauma, and the blockages that it creates. And I love this Three of Wands under this Three of Swords, leading to the Ten of Pentacles. I love all of this because this is what keeps us from being able to see certain things. It's our own pain, our own hurt, our own trauma. It's our own blockages. It's the limitation of our understanding and how, as humans, our experiences inform and dictate sort of our worldview and our life view about the way things work. And so because of that, it can be difficult for us to experience or expand in ways beyond what we've already sort of experienced. Again, going back to the King of Swords. The King of Swords upright being the one who can still listen rather than any other king or queen or emperor or empress who may be of like, I am the top authority within my suit. I know better than anyone. And so no one is going to tell me anything different. And in that way, either they can prolong periods of transformation and transfiguration, or they can completely block and limit it. So either they don't really experience any change at all because they don't allow themselves to, they're not open to it, or it takes them a really, really long time to go through that because it's very gradual, it's very incremental. Everything needs to sort of be like proven in the moment rather than being fully in the experience and allowing the experience itself to tell you and show you what it is. Um, but with the Three of Wands behind that, that's like seeing into everything that was blocked before. And it leads to the Ten of Pentacles. And it's just like a richer understanding of everything. This is a part of understanding everything. But there's a lot more to everything than just this. So that was that. Okay. Where was the chili pepper? Where was the pepper? I don't think there was a pepper in that. Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, I need to start drinking those. I got so many. Oh, I just saw the Ten of Cups. Oh, the sun. Okay. I just think it's really like we're in this space of so much change and transformation, and that I even have to catch myself whenever I talk about the way things sort of have been and how I feel about it, because everything was already changed. Things are already different. And it's like to begin experiencing a change in the physical, it must have already sort of transpired in the astral. And to begin to experiencing change in the astral, it must have already transpired in the spiritual. And so in many ways things are already done, but it's like a lag time on top of a lag time on top of a lag time. But it's not impossible for us to be in tune with the spiritual, to be in tune with the changes as they're happening at a higher level. But the subtlety there is so whatever that it may not even necessarily be extremely beneficial because we still live physical lives. You know what I mean? Oh, well, thank you, Eve. I believe it wholeheartedly. Oh, about my mom. Okay. Yeah. I've told her, don't watch me, don't listen to me. The Moon and the Hangman. What I like about the Moon and the Hangman, as I was talking about the more and more subtle sort of spaces, is that like the Hangman being the bat is alive and active in that. But with this card, something about this Hangman in particular feels like it's a bat out of its season. Like it's a bat that's active in the daytime instead of it being active at night. Because mostly because like its head is in the light and its eyes are up, right? Its eyes are open. And so the bat is going to have a much more difficult experience in the daytime than it is in the night, because evolutionarily it's evolved to be at its prime in the dark. It's like if it's photosensitive, then that's going to throw it off. The things that like fall into its natural sort of diet, and it's a lot of stuff. It's not in its element. So snap. Oh, snap. The Wheel of Fortune, the High Priestess, the Lovers. The Wheel of Fortune was Metatron. Oh, so on the Metatron one with the High Priestess was the devil, which was Samael. But now it's the lovers. It's the lovers free rather than the lovers chained in the more typical devil card, right? So that's interesting. And I guess, like I said, everything was already changed in order for the change to begin sort of physically. But then we also get into choice, human choice. And I feel like, especially in some um, parts of the world, our relationship with choice and consequence has been skewed in a way that doesn't really benefit us. Because if there's no consequence to choice, then does choice even matter? Consequence isn't always bad. But, Anyway, and then the Mother of Cups. Ooh, with the Fool and the Chariot. Love that. And then the Daughter of Cups right there. That's the page 2.0. See, she got all of the shiny, sparkling, multicolored stars outside of the Mother in the dark are within the shadow of the Daughter. It's just how things progress. They say kids these days are born knowing how to use iPads and phones and all kinds of stuff. 3-year-olds got TikToks or whatever. It's just the progression of the species, I guess, in a way. Not that example in particular, but as we progress and as we evolve, and as time continues, things should naturally sort of evolve, right? It's not for most things to be the same forever. But I love this. And I put the Fool up here because it was the Wheel of Fortune and the Fool. But now we have the Chariot instead of that I think it was the 5 of Pentacles. Yeah, it was the 5 of Pentacles. And the Chariot holds a pentacle here. We also have the Sun and the Moon again. But the thing about the pentacle here, especially with this being in the space of the 5 of Pentacles, it's almost like we have enough. We have what we need to move forward. And also, I am going to grab. I was going to start the video like this, but I forgot. So that was these cards. I'm going to leave those as the final shuffle of these. Because I was just thinking about how. I don't know why I thought about it. But I know back in the day when Reem would talk about me, some people would be like, "Is Patrick a spirit? Is Patrick one of your guides?" And she'd be like, "No, Patrick is a real person." And then I think one day Russ was live or something, and Cindy was in there, and she was like, "Is Patrick real or is Patrick a spirit?" And I was like, "I'm Patrick and I'm real." And so I got the mystical shaman, and I wanted to pose a question to the mystical shaman of whether or not Patrick is real or whether Patrick is a spirit. So if the mystical shaman gives me like the ghost dance, then I know that I'm not real and my entire life is just gonna vanish. I'm gonna realize that I was never real and the whole illusion will fall apart. You'd be like, "Whoa, what was I doing here? Why am I watching this blank live stream right now?" You just thought about that the other day? Okay. I'm just curious. I just thought I'd have a little fun. So, what is Patrick? I just want like one card. One card would be easier, but what is Patrick? Oh, snap. Thunder. These look like spirits, so I'm going to say I'm not real. The bottom of the deck is the lower world, though. Thunder of the lower world. That's what Patrick is. Oof. Oh, and the luminous warrior behind the lower world. Okay. And then the mystical shaman behind the luminous warrior. And the rainmaker behind the mystical shaman. And the wind behind the rainmaker. And the owl behind the wind. And taming the wind behind the owl. That's behind the wind, the rainmaker. There you go. There's Patrick. I think I'm real. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Oh, Eve, don't start that again, please. I was at work the next day just going, thunder. Oh. It was stuck in my head. So anyway, that was interesting. So I'm real. I'm not a spirit. The ghost dance didn't come out. That was the only condition. The only condition was that if the ghost dance comes out, or maybe like Vision Quest, then I wouldn't be real. Where's Rob? Rob is... I wonder if he's with his mom for Mother's Day. I wonder how his grandma is doing. Because I think it was a minute ago he said his grandma was in the hospital. So let me get a final card from these. Oh, did y'all see that? And that card, like, okay. So the High Priestess, again, come through High Priestess energy with the Ace of Cups. The High Priestess with the Ace of Cups is interesting. The Ace of Cups, it speaks of capacity. This is 44 and 54. So there is a Wheel of Fortune 10 between the High Priestess and this Ace of Cups. But it feels like it just speaks of our capacity. The Ace of Cups is the biggest cup in the suit of cups, but it's like it's a cup that overflows, right? And so the amount of liquid is greater than the capacity of the cup, and your cup running over is a good thing. All right, see you, Holly. Enjoy your Mother's Day. Our cup running over is a good thing, but it's just like the High Priestess has more. The High Priestess holds more than our ability to comprehend or perceive. And again, we work towards getting a bigger cup. That came out. And it was like, how do we get a bigger cup? And I was like, oh, you just drink from the pitcher. But what if the pitcher is the lake or an ocean or an entire planet of water or a universe, a fluid universe, you know? So Yelahaya, God the eternal, lasting, success, protection from magistrates, and the High Priestess 44, Ace of Cups, Nithael, God the King of Heaven, rejuvenation, obtains the mercy of God, and gives long life. What's at the bottom of the deck? The Four of Swords, Hahahel, the God of Trinity 41. Mission, protects against slander and impious people. Impious? Impious. And I love like this sort of strength symbology here with the angel and the lion, but they both chilling. That's not the lion that was about to attack the angel in that other, in the second strength card in the prime use. Success, rejuvenation, and mission. Protection from magistrates, protection against slander and impious people, and then obtains the mercy of God and gives long life. Interesting. Okay. So with that being said, what was it? Hope. The In the cross lies hope. It was something like that. I was like, oh, let me write it down so I remember. And then I was like, no, if I forget, I forget. I'm not going to write it down. But I think it said, "In the cross lies hope," and then the name on the tombstone was Burns. So I was like, "Oof, the light of the burning cross is the hope of humanity." Happy Mother's Day to Jesus for giving us all a chance at second life, if you believe. If not, Happy Mother's Day to if you believe in someone that gave you a chance at second life. Happy Mother's Day to them. So let's see. I think I shuffled this right. Oh, the Time Master at the bottom of the deck. I'm gonna pull off the top. I'm gonna look for the Andean Cross. The Sorcerer, the Earthkeeper, and the Gatherer is the first three cards off the top. So Earthkeeper now for me is gonna be an elevated sorcerer energy. Because I always see how the sorcerer is blocking the rainbow and how she has these feathers. Well, now coming off of the other side, we see these feathers and they're kind of multicolored. So, like, that's who the sorcerer becomes, or that's what the sorcerer channels. The sorcerer is channeling this Earthkeeper. And then the Gatherer is really good at creating things in the 3D or finding things in the 3D. Thunderstruck. Oh gosh, no! I don't even know that song. That's all I know. Oh, there we go. Fire and Flow. Oh, look at this. 1920. And the cross lies hope. Well, here's the Burns. That was that name. And then there's the Flow. Is there water? There is a water card in this deck. Um, the Journey and the Sacrifice on the other sides of these. Mm. Fire is interesting because Fire came out recently as something different, and I don't remember what it was. Originally, Fire was very Muspel, was very Ragnarok, was very assert. Um, Fire was the one element that survived death. Not even water survived, and that's because fire was the soul, water was the essence. So flow is the process of it's like the soul sitting with the psyche, the soul and the psyche. And so it's the psyche opening up to allow for more of the presence of the soul. This is so weird. It feels like there's a fiery embrace in here. Like you see these two, it feels like they're like hugging. Like if this is a person and we see like this is a person and that's their back, there's this fire in front of them that's like holding them, embracing them. And then we see that tiny little itty bitty heart. Maybe. You see it? Oof. It's like right here. There you go. You can see it. And it's this one. It doesn't matter how I hold it. It came through on the owl that's sitting on her crown. So it is moving the crown. It's moving the. It's not moving the crown down, but it's moving. And Russ, I didn't catch all of it because I was eating dinner and at Best Buy looking at phones with my mom yesterday after Reem was live. Um, but I believe he would have eventually, at least, because again, I didn't finish the video, talked about the higher heart and the lower heart merging into one heart. And like that's sort of what's happening here. As the higher heart descends through the crown down, eventually it's going to meet with the lower heart. Oh, look, and she's like holding herself. And then the fiery embrace. So this is that self union. And there's a 10 Wheel of Fortune between these two as well. And the cross lives hope. And then we have flow and the sacrifice. Flow and the sacrifice is interesting because it's the space of letting things go. When we let something go, we now have room to receive something else. Uh, I think with flow though, flow is a lot more controlling. Is the word I'm going to say because I can't think of any other. Uh, I can't think of any. The the soul key. Okay, I was like the what? The soul key. I kind of like that. Because the flow is very intentional, but sacrifice feels like it's just freely giving. I think also with flow and sacrifice, I'm a weirdo, so it might just be me. This may not be you and your experience. Um, but sometimes when I have to sacrifice something, even if it's something that I know isn't good for me, that I shouldn't have any attachment to, I'm a weirdo and I get attached to like feelings or whatever. Um, and because I remember before I started my journey, before my darkest night, I would talk to a mentor friend of mine, a friend of, he's a friend and a mentor of mine. And I would tell him, I'm kind of attached to my depression. Like I would feel bad if I weren't depressed anymore because like what about the past me that like used to struggle with it so much or like just the feeling itself I don't want to experience it but at the same time I don't know if I want to let it go. um, and that can be the thing about sort of sacrifice and flow. Sometimes it's just like allowing us to get to our next step, allowing ourselves to get a little closer, and even outside of like the people that we might not be able to take with us or the jobs that we'll leave, whatever, within just the self itself, like our understanding of who we are, our knowing how we navigate and operate within the world, even if it's not always in ways that we would like, wish, or desire to. Um, there is sometimes a piece of ourselves that we let go to be transformed and changed and healed or whatever, right? But it's almost also like those those parts of us never really go away. They're just like transforms. And so we keep them with us, but not necessarily in the state that they were in. So it's almost like when we sacrifice them, when we let them go, now those parts of ourselves get a chance to heal and develop and mature as we continue to heal and develop and mature. And so if we find ourselves in a similar space later or in a similar situation, we may be surprised if we're in touch and in tune with who we are, where we are in that moment, and if we're not triggered to like a previous version, if we're not doing a soft reboot to, it's like when you back up, restore previous sort of backup. We're not doing that. We might be surprised to find out that there are some parts, some places within ourselves that have actually grown or healed and matured in some way in the space of that sacrifice. Because it's almost like with the Three of Swords again, it's almost like we remove that Three of Swords blockage. So now, and it's like when Reem was talking about Reiki, energy goes, and that's when she read the ashram. Energy goes where it's needed. And so, as we sacrifice those pieces of ourselves, those parts of ourselves, we actually allow healing energy to come into those spaces. And so, we may discover, we may find out later that the self that we left there isn't the same self that we knew. So there's this really interesting and not entirely surprising um, interaction, I guess, between the internal water and the internal fire. And again, it goes back to the High Priestess with the Ace of Cups. As we sacrifice those things, as we then allow for the energy to then like go in and purify, heal, transform, transmute, whatever those things, we actually increase our capacity. And so now more of the soul can blend with the psyche to get us closer and closer to that soul key energy, right? Because it's hurt, pain, trauma that we're not holding on to as tightly as we were before in the same way that we were before. And again, it's just, it allows those things, those spaces within ourselves to mature and develop. And so we get closer and closer to that innermost self, the higher self, the inner child. But this way, it allows for a maturation, a maturity to sort of happen. So, hola, Steph. Happy Mother's Day. I do want to get one more card on this, though. This is interesting. She's gorgeous. Okay, that's not how I thought this would come out, but the smoky mirror. Bottom of the deck is the upper world. It feels like this owl is dropping the heart for it to combine with this heart to complete that sort of soul, the union between the soul and the psyche sort of being, I guess, the combination of the mental, emotional, intellectual aspects of ourselves, just sort of like all wrapped up in one. Again, because it feels like the body just holds the soul perfectly. Bodies are designed to hold souls, and so, you know, I know some people say that, you know, a body might deteriorate because it can only hold a soul for so long, or blah blah blah. Not blah 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 to be dismissive, but blah 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 to be like, you know, the body does have limitations. Bodies aren't necessarily intended to last for as long as the soul is. Um, but it's everything else. And it feels like when the owl can release the heart, then it feels like it takes us other places. Like it feels like this would be our third eye, right? That this owl can now take through the upper world. Or because it feels like this is related to flow and sacrifice, maybe this is more on the flow sacrifice side. And this is more on the journey fire side. Because it feels like the upper world, when we sacrifice something, it lets us travel through the upper world in some kind of way. And it feels like it's related to this flow. Um, but the other card that came out is the Smoky Mirror. And Russ just did a Pick-a-Roon video. What clouds your smoky mirror? Or I guess what clouds your mirror and makes your mirror smoky? Wait, what? You just got done with the meditation outside on the ground, and your cat had to sit right between your legs the whole time. She was between you, your crystals, and the smudge ball. Ooh. Cursey. I wish I had a cat, but I live in a family of dog people, so it's fine. One day I will have a cat, though. Maybe. Yeah. I might have a cat someday. I might decide that I don't want a pet because of the life that I choose to live. AKA, I might want to like travel a lot and not want to constantly have to find somebody to watch a pet for me. Depending on where I am, there may be different levels of feasible or possible. Plus, if I have friends with pets, then I'll just go and love theirs. um, the smoky mirror is interesting. The smoky mirror is feeling like it's below. This is what this feels like. Let me see if you can see. So we have the Andean cross here. The smoky mirror connects to the Indian cross. And then the fire and the flow are here. See here, down here. This is more the fiery side of things. And then on the other side, it's more of the flow side of things. And so these two come together to create this. And above that is this. And it's almost like, almost not quite, but in blue above this crown, we can see the Indian cross almost. Almost. That's what it's feeling like. And so then this would be up here. This would be down here. And this would be the key in between these two. So the upper world would be more in the Andean cross above this. The journey would be as we're sort of like breaching the water of the smoky mirror and coming to the other side. Sacrifice is the thing that bridges us from the journey to the upper world. Again, the owl dropped something off. We release the owl, and now it takes something wherever. And so below the smoky mirror, in Patrick's world, realm, and reality. Okay, I'm gonna start this by saying in Patrick's world, realm, and reality universe, um, this would be the split of these two energies, and it's mostly a density thing. Um, it's like there isn't necessarily anything on Earth that holds masculine and feminine, light and dark, any polarities. It doesn't embody them in a way that it can be embodied in the astral or the spiritual. because of the limitations of Earth. And it's like there's a difference between like embodying something and like being something, like physically being something. It can't physically be um, within this realm to the same degree that it can be outside of it. And so it's just like here it's split. And then above that, like we come to this space where it comes back together, and then above that it's like the all or whatever. So you rescued your cat from a scary doggy encounter today. What? Well, I'm glad you were there to rescue your cat. Oh, yeah, they say that cats are like cats especially, but all sort of animals, pets, quote unquote familiars. Um, they're sensitive to that kind of stuff. And so again, I think a lot of times in Patrick's world, life, universe, reality, a lot of times humans and humanity will take a certain approach to some things. And because of what humans do, we have a certain connotation about things that are energetic, subtle, or spiritual. And because we are human and because such connotations exist, we try to remove labels or rename, rebrand something to make it different. And I don't personally think that we always have to do that. For me, sometimes it's enough to just go like, okay, well, that's what people said about it, and something about it wasn't right. It doesn't speak on the thing itself. Like that's why I was religious for a long time, because my connection to the divine and to God and Jesus and stuff like that back when I was still more in the church, I couldn't reconcile my connection with the church and with a lot of Christians and how they conduct themselves, what they believe, how they communicate those beliefs, and just sort of like the presence that they hold in the world outside of church. Um, and so for a long time, it's like because I couldn't reconcile that, I was like, well, so like it just made it was like, I still believe, but I can't believe in the Jesus that other people seem to believe in. But then again, it comes a point in time where we just have to recognize like people are going to be people regardless, and we're always going to be people. We're not necessarily created to be perfect. We're not necessarily even intended to be perfect. Because I feel like if we were, we would be. You know what I mean? In a way. Um, but it's just like that's not who the divine is. And so for me, I don't necessarily feel like I have to, like I said, I don't necessarily feel like I have to change the wording of certain things because humanity didn't get it right or because of how we treat each other and how we treat other people. Because if, a rose by any other name is just as it's a rose. You call a rose, let's call a rose whatever a rose is in German. Or let's create a new language and call it something completely different. A rose is still a rose. It carries the same energy, it carries the same essence. But when we use different terminologies and when we use different words, it helps us to see that without the lens and the filter of those connotations. So it is helpful in a way. I'm not going to say that it isn't. But the way that this feels like it's broken down is just like there is a level in which these two are, it's like red, blue, and purple. You know, red is red, blue is blue. Together they make purple. And to get purple, you have to have red and blue in different combinations. But we don't need to. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like I'm not necessarily communicating it right, but I don't. Anyway, it's what it is for all of us. And then I think it was like literally right before I went live, because I say, I hope you have a good whatever you see this, and I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. And sometimes I'll say, like, I hope you find what you need in the way that you need to see it to get where you're going. And I think for me, it would do me good to sort of remember that, because I don't view, see, or feel a lot of stuff the way that other people do. And the same is true for you. The same is true for all of us. And so, it is what it is. I don't know. Room full of gurgle. Not perfect. Kirsty. Virgos are perfect as they are. I feel like, and that's how I view. So the way that I view perfection, I think, is different than the like definition of the word. Because in my world, like, you're perfect if you are being who you are, and somebody else is perfect if they are being who they are. I don't view perfection as this one thing. I view perfection as like, how close are you to you? You know what I mean? So like, perfection to me is relative and subjective. It's not objective and absolute. So, but again, I'm a weirdo. So, and I love it about me. But again, that's the thing about the devil with his book, or the devil with his teachings and rites and rituals and initiations, and Metatron with his book. It is helpful in a lot of ways, but in some ways it can be limiting in ways that may not necessarily be beneficial to us. In some ways it might be, some ways it might not be. The heart of the sky is at the bottom, and I'll take that here. And then completion is under that. So it's like, it's whole, it separates, it comes back, and then we take that wherever. Oh, thank you, Kirsty. You don't know who you are yet? That's fine. Because sometimes we're not meant to know. And so in that, Steph, you are perfect and exactly where you should be. Because maybe one day you will know. But to know first, a lot of us don't know. You know? So this is an hour and 18. Ooh, I feel like I could end it here, but I want to keep going. I don't necessarily want every video to be like 3 hours, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't feel dying. I don't feel dying. I don't know. I'm just a weirdo, I'm the person who's like, I'm glad to be human. I'm loving my experience. If I could reincarnate again, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I love learning. I love feeling like overcoming and stuff like that. So, and so many people that I've talked to, I've been like, if I could choose to incarnate again, I would definitely not. I would, and at least not on Earth. If I could choose to be human again, I wouldn't. And I'm like, I think I would, because I'm a weirdo like that. It's fine. So, final card. Ooh, that almost happened, but it didn't. The Council and the Child. 7-11. Bottom of the deck is the Journey. 29 is an 11. And then the arrow is behind um, the journey. I will leave this one for you. Can you see these? There you go. I'll give you a second with these cards. I'm going to turn this off so you can hear my fan and give you a moment. All right. This was at the bottom. Let's go. But also, with me being the weirdo that I am, not necessarily, I'd like to say that I'm a Pisces number one. My Mercury is in Pisces number two. My Mercury is in my 12th house number three, and my Mercury is retrograde, which is just a bonus. But my brain operates in metaphor and simile. And that's one of the things that surprisingly, I guess, has helped me in learning. Sometimes being able to see parallels between different things to be able to shortcut some of the understanding process, because it works in a similar way in a different environment. And sometimes, I'll be talking to people and they'll be like, that doesn't make sense. They're not connected at all, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, well, in my brain, they are. But for me, life is like math class. And I've talked about it before. Um, because math was like the one subject I feel like in school, and I like math, so but it was the one subject in school where I felt like the most lied to. Because when you're in kindergarten or when you're earlier in your education and you're learning about subtraction for the first time, you're told that you can't take bigger numbers away from smaller numbers. You can only take smaller numbers away from bigger numbers. But then after a few years, you learn about negative numbers. And negative numbers is what happens when you take a bigger number from a smaller number. Like you're told that it's like even with like division and stuff like that. And then going through like in my higher education, like physics and stuff like that, where we start with a lot of assumptions about problems to simplify them, to make it easier to learn. And there are still even things that like you can't do or like it's not possible, and then you continue your education and then you learn about those situations and scenarios that exist beyond what we were told and taught was possible. And so I view life in a very sort of similar way. It's like, maybe we make simplifying assumptions, maybe we make things easier, maybe we make things a little bit more black and white so that we can at least start to build a foundation, so we can start to acquire knowledge and so we can start learning how to apply that knowledge. And then after some time, we learn about the special cases, scenarios, and situations where those assumptions aren't valid, or when we're asked to do things that we were previously told we couldn't do or that weren't possible or that we'd never be asked to do. But now that we have that foundation, now that we have the base knowledge, we can take it further. We can expand upon it. Um, and then after a certain amount of time, and for me, it was like junior year. I say junior year because I was in school for a hot minute. um, but junior year was the first part in my education where I feel like I wasn't given the assumptions. And so one of two things could happen. It's either like you read the problem and you write down the simplifying assumptions that you always do, and then you get the answer wrong, and you're like, well, how did I get it wrong? And they're like, basically, it's like nowhere in the problem does it say that this is an accurate assumption. to counter that, if you were to read this line, you would say that this one property right here invalidates that assumption. So that assumption is no longer correct. Now, how are you going to approach this problem? How are you going to handle this without that simplifying assumption? Now that you can take a bigger number away from a smaller number, are you going to know what to do? And I feel like everything before that was so modular. Like we were all like the problem was almost always outlined either because of the chapter that we were in or because of what we were taught as we were sort of solving that problem. That we never really had to think about that. And I think that was like one of the biggest learning curves from like sophomore to junior or from like junior to senior. Because after you graduate, you're going to go out into the real world. And real life doesn't always fit the neatest, simplest case and scenario. And so it's like they're teaching you at that point when you're starting to apply the knowledge to more real world problems. It's like, well, what assumptions can I make here? Can I validate those assumptions? If I find that one of my assumptions is not accurate, how do I account for that in my approach? And at that point, again, it's more about learning the approach. It's learning about putting your knowledge to use. And it feels like that crosses more into the sort of fool territory because with the rites, rituals, and the Hierophant system, it's like we're told. We're told what everything is. We're told when it applies. We're told like this is how the world works. This is how energy works. This is how everything works. But then if we go out into real life, we may encounter situations where it's accurate and it gets us exactly what we want. We may encounter situations where it's not. And that's when that starts to sort of like break down. And again, in that breakdown, a lot of times we look at the person, people, systems that taught us and we hold them in some kind of contempt. Like, oh, you didn't tell me the journey would be like this. You didn't say it would be that, blah, 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 whatever. And like, true, they might not have. And true, some of them might have known that it was very much so not what they were saying it was. But at the same time, it's like real life isn't always going to be so simple. And the tools that we're given, we get to sort of play with as we go out into the world. And as especially as everything is changing, as everything is evolving, as we are changing and evolving in a space of asking for more from life, some demanding more from life. There are things that we're going to have to interact with in ways that we never necessarily had to before. And we can't necessarily go back and say, oh, well, I was taught, I was raised that this way, so that should continue to be whatever. And it's like, how do we in one breath ask or demand for so much change and for everything to be different, but at the same time expect for everything to work the same? The magnitude of what we asked for, the magnitude of what we built the age of Aquarius out to be is much, much, much greater than it was before. So of course things are going to change, but again, when we are in the moment and present and more aware, it's like we can feel the truth of it. We can find that line of resonance. And sometimes that line of resonance, it gets more and more and more subtle. And even more and more subtle still. And maybe for me, when Rob read me, gave me that general on the rocks, that's what it means to look beyond the fence. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm weird. I'm the person again. I'm like, oh, I love being human. I was like, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Because if I know, then I'm going to have to do something with that knowledge, and I don't want to have to do anything because I'm a lazy, stubborn POS, but it's fine. I'm kidding, kinda. Whew. Righty. But that's something that I've talked about before. Because for me, my experience has been since I was young. for personal reasons, a lot of times for personal reasons, I go to the internet because, dial up was a thing when I was a child, and then DSL became a thing. And then, the internet became more of the internet that we know and love today. But with the internet, I could like look stuff up. Like when the Nintendo 3DS came out and I got Mario Kart, and they were like, you can play with people all over the world, like in Wi-Fi. And that was before Wi-Fi was everywhere. Like McDonald's had Wi-Fi, some libraries had Wi-Fi, but it wasn't super popular at that time. So I'm on the internet Googling how to Wi-Fi so I can get online on my DS at home. And then I get into like wireless routers and like setting up a home network. And I actually like I went to Office Max, bought a router, the Ethernet cord, and Googled my way through like setting up my network. And when I was doing that, I learned how to connect a printer. And then not too long after that, someone's like, oh, I have a printer, but my computer is in this room and I want to put my printer in the other room or whatever. Like, how do I do that? And of course, my mom is like, oh, Patrick can do it because I had just looked it up for myself. And there have been so many experiences where I'm exposed to some kind of knowledge and then somebody asks for it. And I'm like, oh, it's this, or you do that, or blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh my gosh, Patrick, you're so smart. You're so smart. And I'm like, no, I literally just like looked this up. I'm lucky. Synchronicity works in my favor to make me appear a certain way. Not to say that I'm not smart, but this is something that I literally just looked up. It's not like I just have this knowledge in my brain. Um, and so I kind of sort of forgot where I was going with that. Oh, so also sometimes too, when it came to my journey and when it comes to certain things related to a lot of things, I'm like, I feel like if I have a certain knowledge or if I'm granted certain access or information to something, then there's gonna come a point in time where it's gonna be needed. So if we're talking about anything involving spirits or whatever, I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Because if you tell me about spirits, then I'm going to start encountering spirits. And that's the last thing I want to do right now. But it wasn't until maybe a month ago or a few weeks ago or a little over a month ago. Um, it was around the time Rob made the video about when it was like, don't blame spirit for people or something like that. And after that, it was like, well, what if what if the event was going to happen? And the personal reason was to prepare me for someone else to ask later. Because in other people's lives, like everything that, like their life was still going according to their life. So, regardless of whether or not I had looked up that information for myself, they still would have asked me. The difference is now I know rather than, oh, let me go look into this and try to figure it out and get back to you. You know what I mean? And so it's not one thing that necessarily leads to another, even though because of the way I experience linear time, it may appear to be that way. So, and then, that was with everything with work, it kind of sort of worked out in a similar, but with work, it was easier for me to go, oh, like this happened now. So I'm glad I experienced the stuff in the past because of the past, I already know it. And work, it's not like, oh, I did this and now the universe is conspiring in a way to make me do this. But that's how I treat knowledge and information. Like, oh, I don't want to know because if I know, then I'm going to have to do whatever. But now I'm like, I guess I'd rather know because when I have to do whatever, I'd rather not be so lost or clueless or whatever. So, yeah. Wait, where did Eve say that? What video was that? Was that in the Virgo video? I don't get the reference. There's a little bit more that I want to pull for. I'm gonna pull it live, but I'm not gonna tell you why. And we're just gonna see what comes out. Because I'm already here with cards, you know what I mean? So. Sometimes cause and effect doesn't work in linear progression of time. Sometimes the cause is in the future and the effect is in the now or the past. The golden egg. Bottom of the deck is the deer. It was in the spiritual AF deck. Oh, okay. It was Virgo's Oracle card. I like the spiritual AF deck. It's that was quick. The Nine of Pentacles, the Five of Cups, the Seven of Pentacles, with the Magician, and I see the Tower. The Magician, the Four Swords, and the Tower at the bottom. Oh, well, the Four Swords is on the floor now, so. Four Swords in reverse. And the Tower. Lots of pleasing potty words in that deck. Loving the alliteration. This is so I guess with this, it feels a little bit like not performance anxiety, momentum. It's the energy of momentum. But when we lose I, we, you, he, she, they, when the momentum gets to be a little much, question mark, it's like if you are driving and you're picking up speed and then all of a sudden like you're going downhill, right? Because you're going downhill, momentum is naturally going to carry it a lot faster, a lot farther than you were originally sort of going or maybe even comfortable with. And so it feels like with the momentum and the energy of breaking through, it feels like a rhino energy, not necessarily elephant Ganesha. It feels more rhino because of the momentum behind it. And I don't think there's a rhino card, and I don't have the deck with the rhino in it. Um, and so what it feels like it does is it creates situations where we either break through the wall or we crash into it. If we drop momentum, the wall is going to win. If we maintain and maybe even speed up a little bit, we'll win. And it feels a little bit like a whirlwind. And I don't know, maybe that's the Tower here. I don't think I have like a twister card, but I do have the winds and taming of the wind. So I hope they're not too far apart because I'm going to pull back out the mystical shaman and I'm going to pull in between the winds and taming of the winds. Um, so basically, long story short, for this weekend, I've been hearing trains in the morning, and that's not necessarily anything new. But I've been trying to sleep in. But the trains that come by are the longest train horns ever. Like, so like no breaks, and I'm like, I'm in here trying to sleep. Why? Why is this train horn whatever? But today it was like the train is at the station. It's like when someone pulls up and they're like beep 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 beep. Like I'm about to pull off if you don't come out because I got somewhere to be. And I was like, I don't know if the train is gonna leave me, but it feel like the train is like, come on, like get on. Doors are about to close. And so that's why I'm pulling these. Um, but we're gonna look between wind and taming of the wind again. I hope it's not the whole deck, but if it is, we'll see. Because it feels a little chaotic, maybe. Whew, goodness, that's a lot. Oh, snap. I'm actually going to pair these up. So it's going to be these two, the jaguar and the staff, the rattle and the sun. How did I do this? The owl and the mystical shaman. I think the Andean cross came out next because it's under this one. And the luminous warrior, the drum and the lower world. Oh gosh, luminous warrior almost jumped off the table. The rainmaker and the sacrifice. The moon and the seer. And then rainbow. So let's read these. And I'm just gonna make this super difficult. Let's redo this. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's do it this way. I was gonna read these backwards. And I was like, nah. Okay. So a card did fall on the floor. It was somebody in the staff. Oh, I gotta go to the restroom. I've been hydrating like crazy. I've been having issues with my physical body. And because of these issues with my physical body, I'm basically treating myself the way I should be, you know. Um, I'm hydrating more. I'm doing whatever. And I'm like, I didn't need all of this to happen to get me to do stuff, but it's like, well, I wasn't doing it before, so did I? I'm like, man, you got me there. When stubbornness doesn't work for you. Anyway, I will be right back. Give me one moment. You can keep the cards. All right, I'm back. You got a wish list, Steph? I'll get it for you if you have a wish list. Put it on the wish list. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I would love to gift it to you stuff. So if you would love to receive that gift, um, make a wish list and I'll get it for you. Okay. Masterclass. Wait, what's going on? I'm being very ambitious right now, Eve, and I realize that, which is why I was hoping I wouldn't get a bunch of cards from this deck because this deck is not easy for me to read. It's not easy for me to read. So we'll see. Um so the Jaguar and the staff is easy. Um the Jaguar and the staff it's similar to the rattle and the sun. These are very similar energies. These two, it's about, and I think the Jaguar came out with something like that before. It's just like owning the power of our dark side. So the aspects of us that we may sort of see in a certain light, or maybe it's abilities that we have or abilities that people have in general that aren't always used in the more altruistic of ways, I guess. So we might read it as a little selfish or self-serving, but it's the part of ourselves that's like able to do something, able to get something done, and not the right ways. It can be like very narcissistic and self-serving or whatever. But the same is true of the rattle and the sun. And so it's like us using or learning to use aspects of our dark or shadow, as well as aspects of our light, learning to use the good and the bad within us in harmonious ways that lead to something. And I'll just say something because that's the chariot. That was the chariot in the Wild Unknown Tarot with the sun and the moon and the Ace of Pentacles around its neck moving forward. Now, since we are between the winds and the taming of the winds, though, this is it's reminding me of the Cancer Capricorn axis when I read the Zodiac last time. Because it's basically all in. It's a self that is all in. But are we all in a more like positive, hopeful way, or are we all in a more destructive or self-destructive negative way? That it's like, because it feels like the winds might push us in either direction, but when we tame those winds, we decide which way we're going to be all in. And so in this is definitely for me the Five of Pentacles, um, Five of Cups, Seven of Pentacles energy. Because the Five of Pentacles is like it's being pushed to the edge or pushed to the brink, or it's bordering on maybe entering a despair. But with the Seven of Pentacles, it's sort of realizing that most of what we do, if not all that we do, but most of what we do creates a foundation for something else later. And with the Nine of Pentacles, it's a foundation that we're creating to build towards that abundance, hopefully. So that's this. Um, but sometimes they just wish. What? I didn't know that stuff. And it feels like with the Jaguar and the staff, it just has a lot of negative connotation around it. And it might be because of the space that we're in when we engage with it. It might not be. But it's like it's like reformed is the easiest way to say it. It's like that energy can be reformed. So it can be used in better ways. It can be used for the good, right? So under that, we have the owl and the mystical shaman, as well as the Andean cross and the luminous warrior. And I feel like these are both very sort of powerful energies. So maybe I'm going to read these pairs and pairs. We paired the cards up, and then we pair that pair with the pair. I love the Andean cross and the mystical shaman coming off of the rattle in the sun, and the Andean cross and the luminous warrior. Sorry, coming off of the rattle in the sun, and the owl and the mystical shaman coming off of the jaguar and the staff feels also very appropriate. The owl and the mystical shaman is 3938. Interesting. Um, but I think so. When I read this, I read it all together, but these feel separate. Like the owl and the staff would lead, or the jaguar and the staff would lead to the owl and the mystical shaman. Like the rattle and the sun would lead to the Indian cross and the luminous warrior. Um, no problem, Steph. Oh, snap. I love it, Kizzy Cat. You don't have to apologize. Hello. Hello. Hello, my ragtime gal. So this is feeling like this it feels like it's going back to um the cards that came out earlier around the Andean cross, the journey, the journey and fire, and how it's like the higher heart dropping to meet the lower heart, because it feels like this energy is like sun down, this energy, or it's like upper world down, this energy is lower world up, because next is going to be the drum in the lower world, almost like resurrecting. It's a song of resurrection. It brings something back to life. And then the sacrifice and the rainmaker, because the rain falls from the heavens. So it's coming up from beneath the soil, it's falling down from the heavens. And then in the middle would be the rainbow, the moon, and the seer. It feels like it's all centered around this rainbow in some way that I can't align it because I don't have the space for it. Um, because the way it feels all at once, but it reads very either or. Like it feels like these two things are happening simultaneously, but with the 3D human filter, it feels like some people might be on this side, other people might be on the other side. But with the rainbow here, I feel like the rainbow here clarifies that all at once. So let's try to all at once this. So back to the owl, the mystical shaman, the Andean cross, and the luminous warrior. The owl and the mystical shaman is a receiver. the Andean cross of the luminous warrior is a doer. And so it feels like the owl and the mystical shaman it surveils the physical world around us. And then the luminous warrior with the Andean cross is who we choose to be in that world. And so this gives us, it's like this is our connection to the collective. And then this is our own internal everything. And as we go through the both process of pulling from our light and our shadow, or dark, I don't like shadow. Shadow is what shadow is, but this isn't shadow, this is dark. Um, it's like light and night. Shadow is what happens when something obscures the light, obstructs the light. But you can't create shadows in the dark because, there's no light. Now, it feels like there would be a dark shadow. It's something that obstructs the dark to create light, but that, again, it's shadow. It's not really light in and of itself. It's just something blocking the dark. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in dark shadows or light shadows. I don't know what the word is for something that obstructs the dark. Um, but it's very like anglerfish in nature and in its energy. It produces the light to draw in the smaller fish, and then it opens up its jaws and it eats them. And anglerfish energy isn't new. It came out a minute ago. It was coming out for a hot second a minute ago. It hasn't been around in a minute, or since that last minute. But not everything that obstructs the dark is light. You know what I mean? And not everything dark is of shadow. So this is very sort of shamanic in nature. Um, because it does feel more upper world, lower world. The jaguar connects us to the lower world. The sun connects us to the upper world. The luminous warrior is who, I guess the luminous warrior would be like the higher self, but it feels like the luminous warrior is we are, who we can be in the middle world, connected to both the upper and the lower. But with the staff and the rattle, these aren't connections that are just like purely receiving. There is an element of power here. There is an element of being able to exercise something, not exorcise, but I guess you can if you need to, but to exercise something. Um, and so it's a gift. It's a gift. It's a quote unquote authority, but it's authority in the way of like if you make a request, it will be honored. It's not authority in the way of like you commanding things. It could be, I guess. It doesn't feel commanding authority. It's like you have the ear of the upper world and the lower world, and they will fulfill, or they are more likely to abide by certain requests. But it's the task of the luminous warrior to sort of find those spaces where they meet and where they can accomplish something, I would say good, because it's the luminous warrior. I would also say something good because the golden egg and everything else, right? We're not necessarily out here trying to dominate or control or do anything nasty, sick, twisted, dark, or demented, right? I have faith in y'all. And the world has seen enough of that. The energy is moving in a different direction. It probably wouldn't work or succeed. Um, because again, we've done that. And the story, the winds are changing. Um, and so the owl and the mystical shaman it's a middle world connection to the middle world and an upper world connection to the middle world, seeing on the level and sort of above. And again, the luminous warrior and the Andean cross, it feels like soul expression would be the easiest way to put it. But it's like if we get our soul key online and we're acting from the space of that soul key, that's when we're like projecting our soul out in a way. And the soul interacts with the energy of the universe in a very like Eight of Wands way. Um, and then we move down to the drum in the lower world with the Rainmaker and Sacrifice. And there's a lot of like nurturing energy here. Everything that the world needs except light is here. We have rich soil with the drum in the lower world, and we have plenty of water with the Rainmaker and Sacrifice. And it feels like we have light from the Andean cross and the luminous warrior, but it feels like it's not for us to be light here. Um, and I don't mean that in the way where we're supposed to be dark. It's like the divine is light. We are not. The divine. How do I? How do I communicate it? Because I feel like it's not coming out the way that I want it to. Like I don't know if I'm communicating it in the way that I'm getting it. Um, it's just like we can't be anyone else's sun. We can be someone's star. We can try to be a lighthouse, but we can't be their sun. It's not for any person to be any other person's sun. Um, Now, when there are people who are near and dear to us, they can be like a sun, but a artificial sun. I don't. I feel like I'm getting lost in trying to explain this. The light is the divine. The light comes from the divine. Okay, the light comes from somewhere else. Um, Now we can again, like we can be a star in someone's life. Um, we can be a lighthouse for someone else, and so we can like share our light with other people. But us sharing our light with other people is dwarfed in comparison to the light that they can get from the divine directly. But for a long time, and maybe in the age of Pisces, we lived very hierophantish lives. And we tried to pull light from other people and we tried to pull light from systems and beliefs. And sometimes, depending on the hierophant, we would get a greater or not as great amount of that light from source itself. Maybe some people did actually get like, source light from the hierophant, you know? It's all individual. But the drum is bringing an element of healing to the lower world. Healing that's supplemented by the sacrifice of the Rainmaker. And then we end with the moon and the seer. I guess the rainbow is after that. But the moon and the seer, it's interesting. Maybe the moon and the seer is about seeing in parts. Hold on, wait. The drum represents the heartbeat of Mother Earth, so it makes sense with the lower world and your teachings. Okay. What's interesting is though, because it felt like a hurricane or a storm of energies, so that's why I pulled in between the wind and taming the wind. But it feels like this and this is all the taming of the wind that we can do. And there's a perception and there's an awareness here. So that's also included. But this is like feeling the way that the wind is already moving. But everything after that, like this feels like it's outside of us. Like this is just maybe this is the wind itself. Because that makes sense. This is so like all over the place and not linear. It's fine. Which is why like I don't know how to position the cards, but I don't have to. I need to just let it go before I start forgetting and losing my train of thought. Um, but the moon and the seer is interesting because I don't know if we see in parts. It's like there are some things that we see very well, full moon. There are some things that we see pretty well, like gibbous moon. There are some things that we don't see at all, new moon. There are some things that we like barely see, crescent moon. So I don't know if it's like that energy with the moon and the seer, or if the seer can see when the moon is new. And so it's almost this sun and the moon. Oh, look, we got the sun and the moon. It's almost like the sun and the moon energy we see with our physical eyes when the moon is full and the sun is out. We see with this other sight when the moon is new and the sun is not out. Um, but in that, there's an interesting sort of play because if that's the case, it's not for us to always rely on the seer sight because when the sun is out, when the moon is full, we need to look with our physical eyes. And maybe that's another source of like disconnect here because we're so used to always using this pair of eyes for everything. But when we always use this pair of eyes, there are some very blatant in our face things that we can miss. And it goes back to the High Priestess, the Five of Wands, and the Sun, where it's like we see the top of the iceberg, we feel the bottom, but for everything in between, we kind of sort of get lost. And maybe that's another sort of rainbow energy of like learning to use everything when and where appropriate. And I think that also comes in this line with the owl, the mystical shaman, the Indian cross, and the luminous warrior too. And so it's almost about, so there's the part where we pull strength from the totality of who we are, regardless of where we've used that strength before and how we've used it and how we feel about it. Um, it's like, I don't know, if you are good at manipulating people, because you know how people work or operate, and so you know what to say to them to get them to do what you want or believe what you want. It's like you could take that same ability and use it to like, if you know, you can use it to like encourage people, right? Like if someone is down and you know them and you know how to sort of work people in that way, and not to give people false hope, but it's like it feels like you'd also be like really good at catering to people. It's like you'd be a good healer, I feel like, because you'd be able to feel where somebody is, and you'd be able to feel sort of like where they lack or where those holes are within them. And instead of using those holes to attach your little strings and to marionette them like a puppet, you could like connect them to something greater, or you could provide for them, or you could help illuminate to them, and maybe just empower them to get started on sort of healing and mending those things. It's all like how we use it or how it has been used. And just because it was used for not great things in the past doesn't mean that it can't be used for the greater good now, type of energy. You know what I mean? It's very that. Uh, yeah, using your superpowers for good. But it feels like there are some things that we wouldn't even necessarily consider to be a superpower because of such heavy connotations around it. It could also be something as simple as like maybe you're someone who was easily manipulated in the past. And so you would see your caring heart and your desire to believe in people as a weakness. And it's like, no, like that compassion and that empathy is a gift that you can use to connect to people or to do all kinds of things. And you don't have to see it as a weakness. You don't have to see it as something that you can't be because there were people who took advantage of it in the past. Maybe you learn to develop your discernment, or maybe you learn to trust your discernment. Because I think there are times when we can discern that someone might not have our greatest interests at heart, but we want to believe that they do. And so you just like, I don't know, maybe you get better at boundaries, or you listen to your intuition and your discernment, but you take that gift back. You don't allow it to remain like, oh, I'm not going to be this, I'm not going to be nice, because every time I'm nice, someone takes advantage of me, somebody hurts me. It works both ways, in ways that we've acted and in ways that we've been on the receiving end of someone else's actions. And again, that comes back here. This is the receiving end, this is more of the action end. And so these energies actually run in between the both of these. They're not all on one side or the other. They like mix, just like the rainbow is in between. So it feels like with the rainmaker and the sacrifice the heavens are giving, with the drum in the lower world, the earth is in a space of purification. Our foundations are being healed, transmuted, reworked to receive what is being given. And the moon and the seer is to have a dual vision, to not depend or rely purely on the internal, because then that can neglect or it fails to take into account the external. We can't just look at the bottom of the iceberg, because the tip of the iceberg is the part that the boat runs into. You know what I mean? And the shape of the tip isn't always the shape of the bottom. It may be a lot more narrow at the tip than it is at the bottom. So we may perceive something as a bigger problem and as a bigger threat, because under the surface it looks and feels a certain type of way, but on the surface it's like it's not even, it doesn't have the power to influence and impact us as much as we may think it does. And vice versa, right? Sometimes it holds more, it packs more of a punch, because under the surface it is a lot heavier. It's taken, there's so much like subtlety here that we learn with the mystical shaman and the luminous warrior. And we learn to interact in very sun, physical, masculine, expressive, 3D physical ways. And we learn to act and perceive. We learn to act and perceive in both the external and to act and perceive in the internal. And it's that intricate almost paradoxical nature and balance between the two of them that leads to, I guess, maybe the kind of mastery that we're coming into more and more. And that is another aspect of King of Swords energy for me, especially recently. The King of Swords, it's like the Mother of Cups is one aspect of the High Priestess, and the King of Swords is the other aspect of the High Priestess. But the King of Swords is when we interact with the world around us. It feels like the Mother of Cups, High Priestess, is purely observational. So it can see how things play out, but it can't necessarily always account for our own actions and our own intervention, which is very like in that So Raven, like whenever she would have a vision that she would try to prevent, she couldn't see how she impacted the unfolding of the situation. So some of those things she actually caused to happen. Some of the things maybe she did prevent, but it's the King of Swords that knows or that's able to account for our own actions and how the consequences to those actions can shape the unfolding of outcomes. Because again, we're really good at choice. We've become better at choice because we have so many options. A lot of us, in different parts of the world, but we're not. It feels like where choice is more abundant, we're even more detached from consequence. It's the privilege of choice, I guess. Consequence doesn't mean as much until it does, and then it's like, oh, it's the end of the world for some people. And I don't know if consequence is necessarily in here, but I think it is in the owl and the mystical shaman, because that's the space where we see how our choices affect the world around us. And so it helps us build an understanding of the power of our influence or the power of our impact. And without knowing our influence or impact whenever we act, it can be easy to either do way too much or to not do nearly enough. It's like when, oh, I didn't know my own strength. I'm sorry. It helps us to see that. Taming the Wind is 55. Sacrifice is 44. The Wind is 63. The Wind is a 63-9. Taming of the Wind is a 55-10. Love that. Because again, that takes us above, that takes us beyond. And I feel like that's it. For anything that is left unsaid, it will remain so. This feels like where I end this and where I stop this. So, thank you all for being here. Again, happy Mother's Day. Happy US Mother's Day to all the mothers worldwide, globally, intergalactically, intragalactically, I guess, within this galaxy of the Milky Way. I hope you all have a good whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. And whatever you need along your path, journey, or way, however you need it, I hope you find it. Even if I don't get it, even if I personally don't understand, because it's not for me, it's for you. And you may encounter some people who you want to help, who don't get it and who don't understand, but maybe that's because what you find is for you and it may not necessarily resonate the same for them. Check out, Amanda. Again, if there's one thing that Amanda taught me, it's to let other people's journeys be their journeys and to acknowledge and accept that mine is mine. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we have common themes, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we see things in the same way, similar ways, sometimes we don't. But it's to allow for others whatever they need, right? Because we're all starting with different materials in our alchemy aldrons, our alchemy cauldrons. And the aldrin, I like that, I guess. Well, anyway, I'll see you when I see you. Bye.